What's the deal, my people? You know it is Don Tony Teflon, and I'm back at you another one. And Constellation's first 3 episodes have dropped, and if you watch them, you might ask yourself, what the hell is going on with Jo? What's going on with this whole show? Well, in this video, I'm going to explain to you exactly what's happening so that when you go back and watch it, maybe for a second or third time, you'll understand everything. Let's do this. Now, the show's opening salvo begins in the International Space Station. Everything seems good, everything is fine until something runs into the International Space Station, leaving everybody in chaos, trying to put out fires and trying to get everything back on track. Yet right before the accident, we see the person in charge conducting some type of experiment. Now, we later find out that it was former astronaut Henry who sent this apparatus on the space station trying to do some type of groundbreaking discovery. Now, with the ship all messed up, it is determined that the most of the crew has to leave, go back to Earth, while leaving Jo on the space station because there's not enough oxygen for all of them. They also tell her that she has to collect a certain amount of batteries to power up another escape pod so she can escape, but she's only going to have a limited time to see throughout the day and a limited time of oxygen to get off of this space station. Now, despite all the odds against her and all these different occurrences like her losing track of time, Jo somehow miraculously does find her way back to Earth. However, when she gets back to Earth, it seems like things have changed somehow. Like the color of her car, she remembers it being differently. And it seems that Henry is experiencing the exact same thing. So what is going on? I think we get the answer to that in episode 3. Henry is talking to Alice and he's trying to explain quantum physics. And he says, in quantum physics, the same thing can exist in 2 different states at the same time. He further talks about the exact same particle can be black in one world and white in another world. And the same particle can also be black and white in one existence in between them both. But the particle will not decide whether it's black or white until somebody looks at it. And I think that's exactly what's going on. Henry's experiment somehow shift reality, and now we have 2 Joes and 2 Alices. And I think her name is Alice, especially because we are in Wonderland, a space wonderland, so to say. So when we go back to the actual events that caused this whole situation, what crashed into the International Space Station, she sees that it's a lady cosmonaut. Now, I believe that this lady cosmonaut is an alternate version of the Russian woman who Henry is sleeping with. And we know that she was a cosmonaut because we can see the picture of her when she's in her office in the exact same uniform that the cosmonaut was that ran into the International Space Station. So that alternate version of her died in some type of space accident, and then body got flown into the International Space Station, while this reality is still alive, but we hear that she's sick with cancer and she's going to die, and it's going to be their last time together. And I think the same thing is going on with Henry, because I think he was switched because the other version of him, I think, was an astronaut and was on Apollo 19 like he claims, but this version was just an alcoholic who never got a chance to do it. But he remembers him doing that because he's in the wrong spot, but everyone else is calling him a liar, saying he never did that, but he did. It was just a different version of him who stuck in the wrong place due to this experiment that he ran on this universe. So when Jo comes back, we know that her and her husband had problems in their real life, but now all of a sudden her and her husband get along. They were going to get divorced before, but now it seems like they're back in love. And he even mentions it and says, you know, you look at me differently. And she's like, what do you mean? Because you look like you actually care about me. Because when she first gets back, we could see that the husband is really standoffish. He doesn't want to go near her or touch her because he knows what their relationship was. But she comes back and is like, yo, I love you both. I really love you both. And he's like, what? How is this possible that you love me both? We were supposed to get divorced. And that's the same exact thing that's going on. We also hear her say specifically that when she got back, she liked to smell the earth, because in space there is no smell in space, but there's a smell in earth. She likes to smell the air and smell the rain. And this is how she's able to tell which daughter is which daughter, because when we see her with her first daughter and they're in the cabin, we see that she has the experiment there with her, but we know that she turned that over in this reality. So the one in the cabin is really supposed to be her that was in the space station, but she got flipped out into the alternate dimension. That's why when she smells this version of her daughter, it doesn't smell the same to her, because she knows her daughter's scent. So just like the particles Henry talks about, there are two alternate versions of Alice who exist in two parallel worlds. Jo finds herself trapped in between both of these worlds and is able to bop back and forth in these worlds like the particle was able. And it's until somebody looks at it when they say whether it decides whether it's black or white. Well, there's nobody actually looking at her while she's in there. She's able to exist in both planes. And Jo was able to distinguish what's going on, of course, as I said before, through the smell and also through indirect vision, like looking into the mirrors. Now, before we continue with that, let's go more into the Henry situation, because Henry is the one who caused all this mess. If you go to the end of episode 3, we are introduced to another version of himself, and that version is called Bud. Now, just like Henry, Bud is an astronaut, but it seems like when he was in space, things didn't go as well for him as they did Henry. Now, during this interview with this man, he gets criticized about his works and his claims and his endeavors, and eventually he does throw him overboard. But what we do talk about is Bud says that he lost a man recently while he was in space. So hearing that, we have to believe that Paul Lancaster died both in Henry and Bud's alternate reality. But the craziest part about this whole situation is that Bud seems to know that Henry does exist. In episode 3, there's a scene where a reporter addresses Bud as Henry, and also Bud blames Henry for the problems in his mission, which can only lead me to believe that Bud's experiences and his adventures are somehow intertwined with Henry, and just like Jo, Bud is aware of it, but Henry is not aware of Bud. Because we can hear when Henry wants to continue this experiment, he says that he has to do it for his brother. But when Bud is talking to Irene about what's going on, and she mentions his brother, he says he hasn't spoken to him, and he's glad he hasn't spoken to him. So we see that there's two different Henry's Buds, well, they're the same people, but in different realities and have different names. Now, the experiment Henry was conducting had him looking at a new state of matter that could only exist in zero gravity. Now, he seemingly asked Paul to conduct the experiment because objects on the ISS experience microgravity and zero gravity. As soon as Paul initiates this experiment, that is when we see the cosmonaut fall right into the ship and crash. So we have to say, as soon as he flipped that switch, that allowed the alternate reality to leak into this reality, and that cosmonaut came in there and set everything off. Now, to Henry's surprise, even though this experiment can only exist in zero gravity, it continues to work when he's back on Earth. And Henry explains this as an interference effect, but the strange part about it is it only works when someone, Henry, is looking directly at it. And that all lines up with the story Henry told when he was talking about the two separate matters existing at the same time. One is black, one is white, and one is both. But it's only when someone is looking at it that it actually chooses whether it's going to be black or white. If you ask me, I think this show has gotten off to an extremely fast start, a strong start. Also, I love the show. I binged all 3 episodes back to back to back, watched them all, and took all my notes and everything else. But I want to know exactly how you feel about this show. Did you like the opening episode? Is it a little bit wonky for you, or is it right up your alley? Let me know in the comment section. I'll also be doing a live stream later this week to try to break down some more and get your thoughts on it. You can call me up and tell me everything that you think about the show.